pretty progressive legislative committee. You guys didn't hold over.
We only had 2 items.
Well, we only have 2, and I'm planning on maybe 2.5 hours worth of a meeting. What do you think?
I got to get
Look
out.
at Gary.
I
I saw that. You can't get that one back, Gary.
I have an appointment in 6 minutes.
On that note, you're live. It is
Thank you.
6:03.
Oh, let's
You're
be
welcome.
serious now. So tonight is Monday, January 11th, 2021. Call to order the Common Council Finance and Human Resource Committee meeting. I am present. Vice Chair Mark Davies, council member, are you here?
I don't think I'm vice chair, but yes, I'm here.
Oh, Gary, is he vice chair or not?
It's all you, Lynn.
Okay, so I dub you vice chair. There's a reason for that. You'll find out later.
I'm present.
Councilmember Scott Harrington,
Yeah, I'm here.
Councilmember John Rafter.
Present.
Due to the holidays and some other unforeseen reasons, sorry, I can't go into them all. The minutes will be provided to us as soon as possible. So we're going to move on to our topics. Katie, I believe you're up first with paid emergency leave.
So this is somewhat of a complicated topic. In general, when I'm referring to paid emergency leave, oh my gosh, I just threw my pen, I'm sorry. Paid emergency leave is pertaining to the pandemic. So this is time outside of an employee's paid accruals that the city basically gives to an employee for certain criteria that we will talk about. So early on in the pandemic, I think maybe late March, early April of last year, there were corresponding pieces of legislation that made paid emergency leave for employees in certain circumstances compulsory. So we have the New York State piece, which is the Quarantine Paid Sick Leave Law, which we refer to as the Q Law. That's on the state side. And then on the federal side, we have FFCRA, which is Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Are you all, just in general familiar with the concept of paid emergency leave? Len, you're shaking your head no. You are.
I thought I'm sorry, I was jumping ahead. I thought you were going to ask me if I knew anything about Q Law or the FFRCA.
Well, so we'll get into them. So basically what you need to know about these is that up until December 31st of this year, both the federal and the state regulation were in place, which made the city granting time. I'm sorry, my dog is like flipping out too. I really apologize. Giving employees time for certain reasons was compulsory. It was not discretionary. We had no ability. It was just something that we had to do. The state law has been extended, but the federal law sunset as of December 31st. So what does each one of them mean? So the Q Law, the New York State piece, requires that employers provide 14 days of paid emergency leave, which is 14 calendar days, which has been legally interpreted to mean for a full-time 40-hour-a-week employee, 10 paid work days. So 14 calendar days or 10 paid work days of leave if that person is under a mandatory or a voluntary quarantine or isolation order per a county or state or local health department. So New York State Q Law, 14 calendar days, 10 paid days if the employee themselves is quarantined. On the federal side, it really expands the reasons that we were required to provide paid emergency leave. So on the federal side, under FFCRA, we were required to provide leave if the employee themselves, same as the state regulation, the employee themselves was subject to a state or a mandatory or voluntary quarantine or isolation order. However, the Federal Leave Act also said that we had to provide emergency leave for other reasons. If the person had been advised by a healthcare provider that they should self-quarantine due to health-related concerns, if the person was experiencing symptoms consistent with COVID and were attempting to receive guidance from their doctor or attempting to get a medical diagnosis, if the employee was caring for an individual who was subject to a quarantine order, if the person was caring for a son or daughter under the age of 18 whose school was closed or daycare was closed for reasons relating to COVID-19, or any other substantially similar condition. So I'm going through all this so that you can recognize that the leave categories were really pretty darn broad. Again, pretty much any reason relating to the pandemic, if an employee came to us and said, listen, I'm sick, my household member is sick, my daughter's school is closed, I have to be able to be home to help them, we were required to provide this leave. So given now that the federal law has sunset as of the end of the year, it's going to be up to the council to make a decision as to how you want to handle it. So there's a few options here. Some municipalities are deciding to voluntarily extend the FFCRA benefits for the duration of the pandemic. I'm not necessarily suggesting that's what you do, but it's important that you understand that you have the ability to voluntarily extend this leave if you wish to do so. So the first option is that we continue our broad paid emergency leave program, kind of involving, both the federal and the state requirements, as long as you're understanding that the federal would be voluntary, like we are not required to provide leave for that long list of reasons that I mentioned. You can continue with the New York State Quarantine Leave Act, which again is just the 10 paid days if the employee themselves is quarantined or isolated, or we can adopt our own policy combining pieces of each of those if it's something that you're interested in considering. So I know that's a lot of information. What questions do you have for me off the bat? Sure, Len?
On this line item, how much did we spend in 2020?
I did not ask, Ginny, I don't know if you have that information. Ginny, you're muted. You're muted, my dear.
Thank you, sorry. I don't have it right at my fingertips, Len, but it's a report I can run and distribute to all the council members. I will say that there was quite a bit in the spring when we were locked down, and it has gotten progressively better as the year has gone on. But I can do a report.
Okay.
Was a considerable sum of money.
Right. So since we don't have that particular number, committee members, I'm looking at you and you can stop me in a moment's notice if you don't agree with what I'm about to say. But since the full council is going to need to chime in on this, sounds like a substantial amount of money was spent out in 2020 for it, and it will affect our budget, which Ginny has already provided us, and we're locked in. I think we should just move this up to full council to have a full discussion as a council of where we want to take this for 2021. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I would have no problem moving it to council, but am I hearing this right, Katie? Were you looking for some guidance on which direction to propose, or are you looking for feedback, or is that exactly what would be the best course of action, is to have this as a council conversation?
I think that, given that there's a considerable price tag, a full council conversation would be warranted for sure. In the interim, because the federal regulation has sunset and we don't have a successor policy in place, if any of these circumstances come up, we won't be able to provide the leave unless, of course, the person themselves is quarantined. So, but yeah, a full council conversation would be great.
And can I ask one clarifying question? The FFCRA, how long of leave did that provide? You said that the state was 14, but I didn't catch what the federal law was with leave.
I believe it was roughly similar. Let me look. So it's 80 hours, so it's identical. So just the federal leave is measured in hours, whereas the state leave is measured in working days.
Thanks. And yeah, just to restate it, Lynn, I have no problem bringing this up, but I'm just a vote of one.
May I ask a question? Do you want me to put the numbers together and send it to all council members in preparation of the council discussion?
I would say yes. They're going to need a little background information, what Katie just told us. And then the financial impact for 21 or for 2020, and then projected how this is going to affect our 2021 budget, given what we went through in 20. I mean, I don't know if you took this into consideration when you were making the 21 budget though, did you think we were going to have to pay for this again?
What it will do, Len, is if we approve the leave time, we'll be paying, we won't be going over our budget, but we will be paying for non-work hours. The only time we would be going over the budget is if we had COVID, what we call COVID overtime. Say, for example, somebody is quarantined and we have to bring in somebody overtime to cover their shift. That would be the only additional expenses that we would have in that situation. But to keep someone whole, their whole salary is already in the 2021 budget.
Agreed. Scott or John, thoughts?
Katie, how do you assess real eligibility for this?
Sure. So I will say that because this was such a generous leave program and knowing that, you know, economics have been really tight, we kept very close control over how the time was being used. And there was also a significant burden on the employee to provide us with documentation, signed statements, et cetera. So for instance, if you claimed that you needed time away from work and you were unable to telework because of a quarantine order, I said, okay, I'll approve the leave, but give me a copy of the quarantine order. If you had if you were claiming a medical excuse, then I required a doctor's note. So there's an application for the time that we used because I wanted to pay very close attention to it. Greg or I personally reviewed all of these. We didn't even really give the department heads the ability to sign off on this time. Greg and I did it ourselves. So I think that the possibility for abuse of the time is almost non-existent, again, because we require so much documentation in order. And I don't want to give the impression that we're making it cumbersome for the employees to use. We're not. We've worked with people, we've been supportive, but if you come to us wanting to use this time, we do require that you submit substantial proof in order to prove that you qualify for it.
Both the state and the federal are 80 hours then, correct? You said you end up paying 10 days out for state, right?
So for the state, it's 14, the number of working hours that employee would normally work in 14 calendar days. So if that's a firefighter, obviously that's a few more hours than it would be if you were like a part-time bus driver. But it does cap at 14 calendar days, which is roughly equivalent in most full-time paid employees, 10 working days.
10 working days. Basically, both programs are 80 hours.
Effectively, yes.
Just to confirm that, is that additive, that there's 10 days under federal law and 10 days under state law? And so it can be actually up to 40 days?
Yes, that's
One of them is sunsetting.
Federal is sunsetting, yes. And the federal, again, is the one where it just has the expanded criteria. So really what the council is going to have to decide is, do we want to give emergency leave for a bunch of reasons or just for a few reasons? Like still, the state requirement that we provide 10 paid days of emergency leave for people who themselves are quarantined is not sunset. That's still a requirement going into 2021. It's only those other reasons that I mentioned.
And if I'm in quarantining, could be done by a medical professional who in their own judgment says this is Okay. All right.
Any other thoughts or concerns to express?
No, I just think it's a council. I think the whole council should discuss it.
Sure.
So Katie, we're going to move that up for full council discussion.
So that would be, you want that as an individual item for discussion? I'm assuming not on the consent agenda, right?
No, it's not a consent because we just wanted up there as a general discussion. And then if we can get some of the background information in the interim between you and Jenny to the full council so everybody can make a good decision, that would be great. Thank you. And then moving on to topic B, which is building and grounds maintenance worker appointment.
So we have a full-time buildings and grounds maintenance worker. It's a budgeted position. We have selected a person to go into that job. His name is Paul Kelsey. He is actually an existing staff member. He works in the central garage. He's more than qualified, and he applied for the job. And so Greg and I are recommending his hire as the buildings and grounds maintenance worker. It would be effective January 20th, and the salary is $32,393. That is a CSEA grade 7. Again, the position is budgeted and needed.
And this is a position that was vacated recently, or was it something?
Yeah, no, we had a person who resigned, golly, what, Greg, last month?
That's about a month ago.
Committee members, any thoughts or concerns?
None for me.
Hearing none, we'll move that also up to full council. Is there any committee member that has an agenda that they would, or an agenda item that they would like added? Sorry.
In keeping with ordinary practices, I'd like to add 22 items to this agenda. So it sort of balances. No, I certainly don't.
There's no other items that need to be added onto the agenda. I request that we go into, go ahead, Mark.
Jenny has a,
Oh, Jenny has a question. Sorry. Jenny.
I can't hear.
Jenny, I can't hear you.
One sec.
that we heard.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry to add this to the agenda. I got an email from the auditors today, so I wanted to bring it to Finance Committee to consider. Our 2020 contract for our 2019 was our 2020 contract for our 2019 audit had a fixed price to it. And due to the circumstances of COVID and the remote work that we had to do, it took them several more hours than anticipated to finish the audit, just because of the challenges of how we were getting the work to them. Normally, we do it quite efficiently. They're here for 1 week. We have all the information, hand it to them. But this time it was a little bit more time consuming. I asked them to tell me how much more time was involved, and it's about an additional $3,500. And I told them that I would bring it to the Finance Committee for consideration if we are allowed to pay that above their normal rate. What they do is they calculate the number of hours that are invested by each employee or staff member in their team, and that is normally how we are billed. So I just wanted to ask what you thought.
That's why they were buttering us up.
Yeah, Gary,
How great we were.
all those compliments they gave you, Gary, right out the window. No, in all honesty though, didn't they save money in travel time? I mean, it's a little over an hour from their office to here.
Well, they did save money in travel time and hotel costs, but as I said, because whenever you pick up an audit, when you start it, and then you have to put it away because you're waiting for information, you're waiting for uploads and things like that. Every time you reopen it, it just makes it much more time consuming. They're not able to just sit down for 8 hours and go through it. It's piecemealed.
Jenny,
Yes.
is is this the first audit that they have done virtually? I would think they've been doing them all year long.
I know, we are not the first client, no.
So shouldn't they have pointed this out to us beforehand that there would be additional expenses? They should have, this isn't, they must have run it. Are we the only client that has caused them additional hours because of this? None of their others did?
I don't want to answer for them. My guess would be no, that we're not the only client that they've had this with. But I told them that I would bring it to the finance committee for consideration. I did not make them any promises, but I told them that I would bring it up. I can go back to them for more information to see how many other clients they've incurred this with.
It just seems like they should have seen this coming and discussed it with us beforehand. I don't know. We could tell them we have no money, but they know that's not true.
Well, no, they do know we have a contract. So
That's what I was gonna ask is,
yes,
could you forward the contract so we can read it? I mean, see what's in the contract. I think that's a very important part of, before we can even make a decision.
well, the contract is, yeah, I can forward it to you, but it's pretty simple, and it's based on, or Scott, it's based on the anticipated number of hours that they will be putting in. And they base it on history. They base it on how many times they've worked with us. Just this year was unique just because of the
I understand that, but I mean, I'd like to see the contract before I weigh in any one way or the other.
Okay.
And the second thing is I got to agree with the mayor on this. They should have been upfront with this, that this was a possibility, because they knew it was going to be, overtime, if you will, for them with the hours. I mean, I can't really give an answer one way or the other, whether we should or shouldn't. To get this sprung on right now, I mean, I'm sure in about an hour I'll have 20 different questions that I'll probably be asking.
Okay.
So, I mean,
But, well, Jenny, it is confusing because did we have a flat rate contract, or did the contract state that this is an estimate and will be charged based upon real hours?
No, it's a flat rate contract. They
Okay.
base their bid on what they estimate that they're going to put into it.
Okay, so the contract was for a flat rate. Now they're asking us to voluntarily pay more.
And
Okay.
and it's not, I don't want you to think that they are insisting upon it. They were just letting me know how much time they had invested.
Well, they can't insist upon it.
Right. So
Did they actually send you an invoice for it?
he just sent me an email saying that how many hours that they had invested and what the calculation was compared to what the contract was.
Right. So I guess along the lines of what Scott's asking and what I'm asking is, if we go down this path, then I think they should be forthright in telling us where they estimated how much they were going to spend in travel expenses.
Okay, yeah, I can
mean,
ask them for that detail.
I agree with Gary on this. I think it would have been cheaper for them to have done it virtually than to pay staff having non-productive time hours going down and going back up several times throughout the year.
Well, just so you know, they're usually here for about 4 days for our audit. They have 3 nights of hotels, 4 days of meals, that type of thing. But I can ask them for the detail. And I don't think it will be an issue, but I just told them that I would present it to the committee for consideration. And it doesn't have to be decided upon tonight. I just wanted to bring the topic up.
Mark, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to know when did they actually give us that contract? Was this pre-pandemic or was this during the pandemic?
Oh, no, this was a 5-year contract. So this was the last year of the contract, and we've extended it for 1 more year. Then we're going to go out for RFP. So they gave us this amount 5 years ago.
Okay.
So it sounds like
Well,
we're going to hold off on this one, Jenny, until we get some more background information, and we'll revisit this in 2 weeks.
Sure.
And then so in 2020, Jenny and Gary explained to me that every now and then I would have to, as chair of the committee, look at vouchers. And it was described to me that I would be looking for discrepancies. Because of the pandemic, Ginny's time was doubled, if not tripled, and doing other work. So that didn't really happen but once, right, through 2020. We
One
need to,
year.
yeah, we need to catch up, and she's coming up with a new system to take care of that. And Mark, that's where I was joking about you being the vice chairs that about is that it sounds like it's going to be a tedious task. So we could take a vote of who's going to get stuck with that. But it could be 3-1 against you guys, me, or we could pick on somebody else. But anyways, Ginny wants to suggest that maybe these vouchers be put on the website so all council members could actually go and take a look at it and kind of all share the responsibility. I wanted to put that out there for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and just let me weigh in there for a minute. I was talked to Carrie about possibly having a link on the website that only the council members and employees could get to. The public could not see. I mean, Carrie, I think you're there. We haven't finalized the conversation yet, but I think she told me it was a possibility. That way I could put the voucher detail reports out there, and then any council member, any official can just go in and take a look at them.
It would be similar to an unlisted video on YouTube. If you don't have the link, you're not going to have access.
Well, Ginny, the question is to you. I mean, does this meet the requirement?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Less work or more work for everyone involved?
It would be more work for the council members to actually take the time to sit and read and just review them. But as I was telling Len, for example, last time we had a huge approval, it was like 1.7 million. I'm sure people wanted to know what made up that number, and a lot of it was the wastewater treatment plant. You know, so that way, if it's out there on the website, any council member can go in, take a look, and just see what it is that we're paying for. And as I told Len, what the process is when you have an audit claim or a voucher claim reviewer, you're looking for fraud, or you're looking for conflicts of interest, or you're looking for the, you know, a questionable expenditure. You know, for example, if you saw an invoice where I bought my staff lunch, you know, you would say, Ginny, what are you doing? You know, this is not a legal expenditure. You know, just those type of things.
Jenny, you better include me next time if you're buying lunch.
Okay.
I joking aside, I think it's a wonderful idea if we could get it up there for the whole council to look at. I think that would be a good transparency thing. And then, you know, we wouldn't have to maybe write you so many emails on why was this, and this, that, because people are asking us about this, that, and the other thing. If it's there, then, you know, it's my job to go there and look it up.
And what I would do too is I would put like a narrative on there with Carrie's help as far as the process, so you understand the number of levels of approvals that these invoices have already gone through, between the requisition, the purchase orders, the voucher creation, the voucher approval. It's already gone through a number of, and also the budget. So it's already gone through a number of levels of approval, and this is just the final piece.
Ginny, I have no problem with it. Len, I have no problem with it. Opposite to what I think Scott is saying, it'll be more work for Ginny because you'll get more emails, because you'll have 8 people sending you emails saying, why did you spend $200 with so-and-so business and so and so. But that's okay.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Gary.
hopefully the narrative within the voucher will answer their question. That's what I'm going to hope for.
Are these narratives that already exist, I assume?
Yeah, when we create the vouchers, yeah, the purchase orders will be in there. So it'll say, for example, it'll say, you know, uniforms for firefighters, or
Okay.
you know, that type of item.
No, I don't see any problem with it.
Okay.
Any other items that need to be added onto the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, I would move that we go into executive session to discuss a particular city personnel.
I'll second that.
Gary, if you
It's gonna
could,
be- the 4 committee members, mayor, and, personnel.
The committee members, the mayor, and the personnel director. Thank you.
sorry, Ginny, and moving forward for purchasing items, can you just quickly recap where we're at? I think I have a thought of where we're going to be purchasing apparatus or equipment in general. And you just kind of bring the committee up to date, what we should expect the first quarter and second quarter with regards to those two subjects.
Do you mean as far as anticipated expenditures or?
No, purchasing of either apparatus or equipment. We put 100% of all that to wait until the third quarter, or did we say that there was going to be some within the first and second quarter?
No, there is some for the first and second quarter, and that is in the adopted budget under the equipment schedule. There's another section within the budget that shows things that have been postponed for reconsideration as of July 1st.
Right.
I can refresh and send out reports to you so you know which lists are there. But anything that is going to be spent with reserve money, for example, the public safety reserve for the camera systems for the police department, that will be brought to council in a separate motion to authorize using that reserves if after the bid process and the specs and all of that is done, that will come back for council for approval again, even though it's already been in the adopted budget. Anything that is purchased with reserve funds has to come back to council for additional approval. Are there any specific items that you're curious about, Lynn?
It wasn't about curiosity. It was just I wanted expectations, because I think by this meeting last year, we started really getting inundated with, we're going to purchase this, this, and this from different department heads. And so I just had any of those, because in my mind, I was thinking we had them all weighted. They're in pause until the third quarter.
Yeah, not all of them. Let me just grab my budget.
No, Ginny, it's okay. We can all look. Probably the only update that I'm curious about is the police vehicle that we purchased last year. Did they take possession of that?
Not yet. It has not been delivered yet. I can check with the police chief to see where it is in production, but that has not arrived yet.
Len, kind of to that point is maybe we should kind of keep that contract handy, because if they go over the delivery date or there's any kind of delays or something, that could potentially be money back to the city.
Okay, that's a good point. I mean, do you get contracts written that way, Ginny?
It depends on how the specs are written. So each spec is different. Greg can give you better advice on how, a lot of contracts are written as far as, construction, if it's not done by certain days and things like that. But with this build, I would have to go to the actual contract to read the language.
Okay. What do you think, Jenny? Did we conclude everything that you wanted to cover?
For tonight, yes. And I just want to remind you that I am hoping to be able to give you an estimate for 2020 by next Finance Committee meeting. I'm going to be trying to do estimates between now and then.
Okay. All right. Gary, did you have something?
Just Ginny, just double checking, you're going to be prepared for the council meeting next week to present on the transit hub options?
Yes, Greg and I are.
And how we're going to pay for them?
Yes, Greg and I are going to meet on it this week to get our presentation ready, and we should be all set for next Tuesday.
Great.
Okay. I'm looking at everybody. It looks like we're all set. All right. Well, have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.